only need the English. So I need everybody to have a copy of Shmot in front of them. First chapter.
All right, and I'm going to say good morning to everybody, and I'm going to introduce our very special guest speaker, Peta Pellach, and then I'm going to fade into the background. It is a very special honor for us to host Peta Pellach, who is a very popular speaker from Israel. She is a fifth-generation Australian and made Aliyah in 2010. Peta is a senior fellow of the Kiverstein Institute, director of educational activities for the Elijah Interfaith Institute, secretary of the Jerusalem Rainbow Group for Jewish Christian Encounter and Dialogue, a co-founder of Praying Together in Jerusalem, and a teacher of Torah and Jewish history. She also broadcasts weekly on SBS Radio, which is an Australian radio program, with the latest news from Israel. Her other passions are Scrabble and Israeli folk dancing. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to hear Torat Eretz Yisrael from our speaker, who's going to be speaking about reliving Yetziat Mitzrayim, diving deeper into the Torah text. And finally, I just would like to acknowledge and thank Elaine and Leon Genisov for sponsoring today's speaker on the yahrzeit of Elaine's mother, Rachel Bat Zvi Hirsch, Zichrona Livracha. May her neshama have an aliyah. So with that, we're honored. Peta, please go right ahead.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, and thank you, Elaine and Leon. It's been a pleasure to meet you in Jerusalem and to be able to continue to work with you. What is happening today is not a speech. It's not a talk. It's a deep dive into a text. And in order to do that, I'm going to ask if everybody could please have a copy of Shmot Chapter 1 in front of them. That would be really important. And the second thing that I'm going to ask is, unless there's a really, really good reason, if you would have your camera on. And the reason that I'm going to ask you to have your camera on is because I'm going to ask for your responses. And sometimes you will want to raise your hand, using the symbols, but I'm not really good at that. And sometimes you may want to literally raise your hand, and sometimes they may just catch your facial expression and say, yes, Leon, what would you like to say? Yes, Levi, what would you like to say? So it's important for me. Normally, this method of learning, what's normal? Prior to Corona, we actually thought that this method of learning only really worked in person. And since Corona, we've discovered that it works really beautifully over Zoom as well. But as I say, there's a couple of conditions, and one of them is that your cameras are on. And I can see already, I assume Doctor Who is not Doctor Who, but rather something to do with the hosting of the program, because it was present when I came in. But there is somebody here called Levi, and there's somebody called Annette, and they don't have their cameras on, and I would be really, really grateful if they could do so, and then I'd see your faces. Is there there might be a reason. So I want to say good morning to you. Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Good morning to you. It's good afternoon to me. And I'm going to begin reading Shmot Chapter 1, and I want you to follow with me, if that's all right with you, please. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. Each man and his household came: Reuben, Shimon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zvulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. You've seen it. You know it. These are the names. And you might remember from the birth of these children that each of their names has a meaning. So I'm going to ask each of you who's here, whom I can see, to share with me something about your name. And very, very quick, because we don't want to spend all the time on this, but very brief, something about your name, and either what it means, or what it means to you, or what you would like it to mean. So I'm going to give you an example. My name is Peta, and it's an Australian name, not unknown in Australia. But in Israel, it's the female version of Peter. But in Israel, using that name, I think it signifies both my uniqueness, because I happen to know there's one other Peta living in Israel, so my uniqueness and my sense of humor, because you have to have a sense of humor to use the name Peta in Israel. So I'm going to pick on you, and I'm going to pick on Elaine first because I feel that she won't hold it against me. Elaine, share with me your name and something about it. And if you prefer to talk about your surname or a middle name, that's fine too.
Okay, I'll talk about my Hebrew name. My Hebrew name is Chava Sarah. So Chava was the first woman, and Sarah was the first woman of the Jewish people. So that is special for me.
Beautiful. Thank you so, so much. And Leon, you're the next victim. Please share with me something about your name. You need to unmute to share. Leon, you need to unmute to share.
Yeah, I'm right. So my Hebrew name is, you have to turn off your mic. Put yourself on mute.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Okay, my Hebrew name is Yehuda Leib, or Yehuda Leib is Yiddish. So Yehuda Leib. So Yehuda is, signifies lion. I would like to think I have some attributes that are similar to a lion. I don't roar though, but and I'm pretty mild. But I'd like to think I have the inner strength and fortitude and leadership. Okay, I have the strength and leadership of a lion. So
Brilliant.
that,
Thank you so much. That's great. Bracha.
All with Elaine's support, though. I have to tell you, it's all with Elaine's support.
The lioness behind the lion. Bracha, if you could unmute and share something about your name, please.
So, I mean, obviously, my name is Bracha. So, and I like it. And I always want to be a blessing for my family and others. So I hope that it rubs off on me a little bit. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. And sitting next to Bracha is?
Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Her better half.
You're familiar to me, Michael.
Oh,
have we met?
I don't know. You do look familiar.
Yeah.
Anyhow, well, Michael is my English name, but my Hebrew name is Menachem Shlomo. Menachem means comforter. And I think I do try to help people out, to help solve problems and so on. Shlomo Melech. I'm not going to claim to have the wisdom of Shlomo, but both names are from my ancestors, from my great.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Now, in Leah's place, I see Leah and somebody who's clearly not Leah. So let's start with the person who's not Leah, and you share your name, and then we'll hear from Leah.
Okay, so my name is Les, and my Hebrew name is Elazar, which is the name of Aaron's son. And I don't know why people keep calling me Eliezer. People have a lot of trouble with the name Elazar, and they always keep calling me Eliezer. No, Elazar is from the Tanakh, and that always bothered me.
Okay, so you've got to be determined to hold on.
Well, actually, I remember when my father named me, he told me that he had trouble, that people would come up to him and said, there is no such name as Elazar.
Oh, they didn't read this coming week's parsha, did they? Leah, you share with me about your name.
Okay, my Hebrew name is Rachel Leah, and I use the name Leah because I feel it has more strength and a lot of leadership. And by coincidence, just as Leah in Chumash had 6 children, I also have 6 children. So it worked out.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Izzy, you'll need to unmute. Izzy, you'll need to unmute. There we go.
Yeah. So Izzy is short form for Yitzchak. And as we all know, Yitzchak is named because his mother laughed when the angels told him that he was going to be born. But I see it as a different thing. I see Yitzchak as trying to bring pleasure to people. That's what I try to do my whole life.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Harry. Harry, you're still muted.
Yeah, my name is Harry. Hebrew name is Tzvi, but I was named after my father's late brother that perished at the Holocaust, Herschel. So like my nickname me Herschel all the time, and I guess the biggest meaning, I guess, carried on so many years later is just, I don't know, maybe remembering the past and making the world a better place in the future.
Wow, powerful. Thank you so much. Mark.
So my Hebrew name is Moshe David, named after a grandfather whom I knew. But my late father's name is Melech, so I always like when I'm called to the Torah because it's Moshe David ben Melech, which it's a bit not Melech ben David, but I like David ben Melech.
Lovely. Well, you should know that David HaMelech Street here, at one end of the street is called David HaMelech, and the other end of the street is called HaMelech David. So there's something in that. We've just lost my order as I was, so we're going to go to Esther now. You'll need to unmute, Esther. You'll need to unmute. You're still muted, Esther. You're still muted. No. While Esther works out how to unmute herself, we'll come back to her. Karen, would you go next, please?
Sure. So my name is Ray of Light, and inspire any way I can for people. The second one is of course, Karen as an animal, and that is a characteristic I would say that try to that things are like to stir it up a little bit, to poke the bear if you do. That's it.
Karen, I'm afraid that your connection isn't great. I did have a bit of trouble hearing you. I hope that we're able to, that improves over time. Esther, you're unmuted now, even though your camera's
my name is Esther Basha, and I'm known by both names. Some people call me Esther and others Basha. So I'm known by both names, and apparently I was named after some Bubba. I don't know which Bubba, but some Bubba. And that's my story.
Lovely. My Hebrew name is also Esther, named out of 3 out of 4 of my great-grandmothers were Esther, so I really have no choice. Levi, or is it Levi or Levi? How do you like to pronounce it? And you'll need to unmute and share with us.
Levi. My name is Levi Shlomo. Levi comes from my mother, who's Elaine, she's a Bat Levi from that her family. I like to think that I'm also the 3rd son similar to Levi. And I also think I like the Levim were I like singing and songs.
Okay, Levi, your connection's also not great. So you might do what Karen did. She turned off the microphone after having introduced herself, probably because that improves the quality of the audio. But what I'm going to ask, even though Karen's been forced to turn off her camera to get good audio, I hope she is going to be able to participate fully, and that will mean either switching it on or unmuting yourself as we go. I'm assuming that Annette and ADR are not really here. If they are, please unmute and introduce yourselves. No. Oh, Annette, you
hi.
are.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry, I'm not feeling well.
Annette? Can I see you?
I can't. I'm not feeling well. I have COVID, so I'm not.
Oh,
I'm
not
doing great. But I'm happy to join. So my Hebrew name is Chana, and the letters of Chana, Chet Nun Hey, stand for Chala, Nida, and Hadlakat Neirot, which are all of the women's beautiful mitzvot, and wonderful to be blessed as Chana, which is my late aunt's name. And that just describes my essence. I love to do chesed and worked with preschool children for most of my life. And that's my name. And Annette is, I guess, the English version of Little Anne, which my parents named me. Yeah. So that's it. And thank you. Yeah.
And thank you. And do I detect a South African accent?
Yeah, because you certainly do. Yes.
Because the suburb in Sydney I lived in was known as St. Ives or St. Africa.
Okay, yeah, I have cousins there. Yeah, I
There
do
you
have
go.
cousins in there.
Okay.
Small
So,
world. Yeah, thank you.
thank you. So what we've got so far is our names. But for the remainder of this 90 minutes we're going to spend together, or for most of it, I'm not going to request that you are your name, but I'm going to request that you respond to me in the voice of the characters to whom I address the question. The method we're using is called Bibliodrama. And without going into many details about Bibliodrama, there are two schools of this methodology. One of them is a Christian European school of Bibliodrama, and the other is the North American Jewish school. We're using the North American Jewish school, even though I was trained in an interfaith context, and we did a little bit of an amalgam of both the Christian and the Jewish approach. But there is a difference in what we're trying to achieve, because what matters to us as Jews, I think, is that we really get hold of the text, that we grasp the text, and that the text remains with us. Whereas in the Christian school of Bibliodrama, the most important thing is the messages that come from the text. And if the text is left behind after the messages are grasped, that's okay. But that's not the way we do it. So this is the method I want, is for you to feel more engaged with the text than you ever have before, and I hope that will be the case. So we're returning now to our text, and I will read, from time to time I might ask other people to read, but I will read a little bit more, and then I will address a question to you, and remember the rules. You only answer in the voice of the person who's being addressed. And you never say they, you always say I or we. You never say he or she, you always say I or we. Okay, you'll see as we go. So it goes on. Now, all those descended from Jacob were 70 souls, and Joseph, who was in Egypt. Now Joseph died, as well as all his brothers and all that generation. The children of Israel were fruitful and swarmed and increased and became very strong, and the land became filled with them. So I'd like to turn to you, children of Israel, in the land of Egypt. And I'd like to ask you to share something about your lives in the land of Egypt. Particularly, I want to ask you, children of Israel, are you confident about your futures in Egypt? Are you confident about your futures in Egypt? And do you have any nostalgia or yearning for the land of your forefathers? Children of Egypt, descendants of Jacob, share with me something about your life in Egypt. How do you see it?
Okay, I'll start if you want. Okay, it's been a number of generations now, and lots of stories from my grandfather and father about how the other land, but I really long to see. I don't think I'm ever going to get there because there's so much work to be done here, and they don't give us any dignity at all. So I've almost lost all hope.
So here is a child of Israel, one of our fellow tribes persons, who says that she was brought up with a longing for the land, but with all the hard work that she has to do in Egypt, she's really given up any hope of ever seeing that land. Any other children of Israel with any other experiences? How are you feeling?
Well, before Pharaoh started making us slaves, we were living in Goshen, which was a fertile area. There were no, we had all the water, all the crops, and all the animals that we needed. It wasn't like the stories that we heard about in Canaan, where the rains didn't come and there were famines. We didn't have any of that. So life was good.
Life is good for you. Life is good. And you actually feel you're probably living in a better situation than you would have if you'd stayed in the land of your forefathers. Thank you for that view. There's another child of Israel who wants to share. Yes.
So, yeah, so I was about to say the same thing because we're talking, before the Egyptians get nasty
And because we're siblings, so we think alike.
Bracha and
Les.
I've gone blank. Les. I just want to remind you, you're in the present tense. So you don't know
but
what's going to happen.
I was clarifying.
No, so you don't know what's going to
and
happen.
so I am having a great time in Goshen, and the Egyptians actually honor us because we saved them, and we have an amazing reputation, and we're like the higher stratosphere of the community. We've got everything we need. It's just great here.
You're doing well. Happy. That child of Israel doesn't have, our first child of Israel had nostalgia because had grown up with the stories, but this child of Israel hasn't. There's another child of Israel who wants to say something. Yes.
I'm quite happy here in, it's a Jewish suburb of Egypt. All my family's here. We've got our own yeshivas and shuls and everything here. And it's really quite comfortable here to be here in Goshen with my family and my shul and my yeshivas next door.
Thank you. Thank you. We're returning to the text. A new king arose over Egypt who did not know about Joseph. He said to his people, "Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more numerous and stronger than we are. Get ready. Let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they increase and a war befall us, and they join our enemies and wage war against us and depart from the land." So I'd like to address the people of Egypt. And I'd like to ask you about your experience with the children of Israel and how you feel about them, particularly how you feel about them when the new Pharaoh makes this, brings this revelation that the children of Israel are more numerous and stronger than we are, and they might fight against us. Children of Egypt, people of Egypt, share with me what your experience is of the children of Israel and how you feel on hearing that command.
I mean, I heard about something that I remember there was some forefather, they brought some good to this land, but they also made us move all around the country. And I used to live somewhere else, and I don't know why they displaced us. And so it's really getting irritating. And I really wish they could just keep to themselves, and they're beginning to get a bit irritating.
So, these children of Israel, they're not really then integrated into your life or with you. Bit of a concern. Yes.
I mean, I work hard and I mind my own business. I don't have nothing to do with them, but I do know that, we used to own our own farm before they came. And now we basically don't own anything. We kind of have to work and hand over, like we're sort of sharecroppers. And I understand that our family used to be much higher. And now we're just kind of like the lower class. And they came here. And who are they? And now they're the higher class. I mean, I'm not really sure how this is all working. But there's definitely something there, and it's our land, so I don't see why it should be this way.
Yeah, it's true. I heard stories that our family was better off before they came, and somehow they've managed to usurp the power and the influence. Yeah, I believe what the Pharaoh says. Any other Egyptians? Any other Egyptian voices? So they appointed over them, I'm reading the text, tax collectors to afflict them with their burdens, and they built store cities for Pharaoh, namely Pitom and Ramses. But as much as they would afflict them, so did they multiply, and so did they gain strength, and they were disgusted because of the children of Israel. So the Egyptians enslaved the children of Israel with back-breaking labor. And they embittered their lives with hard labor, with clay and with bricks and with all kinds of labor in the fields. All their work that they worked with them, with back-breaking labor. Before I ask the children of Israel how they are feeling at this point, I want to ask the people of Egypt again. Some of you explained to me that you had felt displaced by the children of Israel. But are you happy with this policy? Do you think this is the right way to deal with it?
Well, I did at the beginning when Pharaoh was just saying we should do a few things to protect ourselves. But now I'm getting a little uncomfortable because like we are very religious people in our family and we pray to the gods. And it's something's wrong, and don't tell Pharaoh, but like we know stories of this Joseph person whose name I can't pronounce in Egypt, but and it's not natural that you enslave people and treat them like this, and then they get stronger and better, and my grandmother said that the gods aren't happy, like this Joseph person did good things, and something's going on here, and we'll pay if we're cruel to
so
someone.
This Egyptian has
This
said
is
a couple
a little
of things.
scary.
This Egyptian said a couple of things. The first thing that the Egyptian said is it's morally wrong. I'm not so comfortable with it morally. But then this Egyptian said something else, and it's going to backfire, or it seems to be backfiring. So not is it not only good for us morally, it may not actually be practically good for us either. So that's one Egyptian voice. Are there different Egyptian voices?
Well, I'll tell you, these freeloading Jews came here and living off the land, high on the hog. It's time that they started earning their keep. And it's good that we're putting them to work in building public structures. That's just paying back for all the freeloading they've been doing till now.
There you go. There's a completely different Egyptian voice. No concern at all. Yes, more Egyptian voices.
I don't understand your question. Who am I to question Pharaoh? He's my God.
There you go.
I agree with Mark. I agree with Mark. We should follow orders to the letter. And, these Jewish people were privileged all along. And I think now is the time to get our uppings.
We're the master race, right? Sorry, it's the master race. We're superior. They're like vermin. So therefore, believe in our gods. They don't integrate in any way. They speak our language. They have their they're not part. Well,
no problem at all. Why should we treat them as human beings? They're not fully Egyptian. They're not fully one of us. No problem at all. Children of Israel, what are you feeling and thinking at this time? Do you have hope? Do you have regrets? Do you have plans? Children of Israel, at this time, when your life has become embittered?
I am bewildered. I don't understand what's happening. How all of a sudden.
Thank you. Bewilderment. What else are we hearing from children of Israel?
Things are getting a bit worse, but I can't see them getting worse than this.
You think you've hit rock bottom?
Yeah, of course. How could it get wrong? I mean, yeah.
Intrinsically, you're optimistic then, because when you hit rock bottom, you can only go up. Very good. Any other voices from the children of Israel? What are you feeling now at this point?
Well, we have a mission. There's going to be a redeemer, but hopefully, they'll come magic words. But
a person of faith. We're hearing a person of faith. There is going to be a redeemer. Another voice.
At least.
Another voice?
I don't understand what's happening. I mean, I
Okay,
just don't understand. I don't understand what's happening. I've never been bad to anyone. When I had food, I shared. My forefathers were always kind to the Egyptians, helped them out anyway. Well, why are they doing that? I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand why God would let this happen. I
Okay,
don't
so
even
here
understand
here's another-
anymore why we're here if they don't want us. So we have a land. I just don't
Ah.
understand what's happening. I just
That's
I'm
the
completely-
bewilderment that we heard at the beginning, but you've said something else. You've added that other layer of what are we doing here? There's another voice. I heard another children of Israel, another child.
I want to have time to think about what's going on. I'm just too busy. I got these Egyptians that telling me I have to do all this building, and I'm working every single day, slaving away. And when I get home, my wife just had 6 babies at once. I'm like trying to get all these. I don't have any free time to even think about what's going on.
It's just too overwhelming. I'm really, and this is something I can identify with. I'm just too tired to even respond. I'm just too tired to even respond. Would somebody like to read us verse 15 to 18? Do I have a volunteer reader? Izzy, thank you.
The king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one whom was named Shiphrah, and the second whom was named Puah. He said, when you help the Hebrew women give birth, and you look on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall put him to death. But if it's a daughter, she may live. The midwives, however, feared God, and they did not do what the king of Egypt had told them. They kept the boys alive. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing, that you have let the boys live?
Okay, and I must say, Shiphrah and Puah, I'd like to ask you the same thing that Pharaoh asked you. Why have you done it? Pharaoh gave you an order. He said, kill the baby boys. Tell me the truth. Why didn't you kill them? Shiphrah?
Because our job is to bring life to the world, not to destroy life. So if we can manage to get away with doing this, we're going to do it. We're not going to kill babies.
This was my calling to do this, to help women deliver children. And my calling is my calling. I know Pharaoh is mighty, but this is beyond. It's not a normal thing to bring life into the world, help life come into the world. And I will stay true to my calling, whatever it takes.
Before I heard a voice of an Egyptian that said, what's there to even question? Pharaoh's God. If he says something, we do it. So I've just heard 2 incredible voices of midwives who didn't even for 1 second think about doing what Pharaoh said to do. I wonder if any of the midwives here can share with me, from where does the strength come to resist Pharaoh in this way? Yes.
God, you're Pharaoh.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
God more than I fear Pharaoh.
I fear another God, a different God, more than I fear Pharaoh.
I'm not listening to another God. I'm just thinking about what is right in my heart. And if it means that I'm going to be killed by Pharaoh, so be it. But I'm not going to turn my back on life when women are going through such difficulties and there's so much risk. There's no there were no hospitals yet. There isn't such a thing as a hospital. So many women and babies die through childbirth anyways. I'm not going to be part of this.
And
I
here we
refuse.
have, this is fascinating exploration of the motivations of Shifra and Pua, because we've heard actually two midwives' voices who said there's something deep inside me that sees it's my calling to bring life into this world. But we've heard a third voice which says, and I'm hearing a divine command not to take these lives. I'm hearing a superior God, a God, as opposed to Pharaoh. And I don't have fear of Pharaoh because I fear God more than I fear Pharaoh. So they are different reasons that I'm hearing from midwives. Is there any other midwife voice? That,
Yeah.
yes.
Also, I mean, I as a midwife, my employer is the parents of the child. And if I get a bad reputation, I will not have any work.
Okay, very practical, but also I think that this says something about the way you view Pharaoh's power, that, you know, that you're saying something subtle there about the way you view his authority over you. Very interesting. So we're going to move on with the reading. And the midwife said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are skilled as midwives. When the midwife has not yet come to them, they've already given birth, which is not something I heard from any of these midwives when I asked them privately why they didn't kill the boys. God benefited the midwives and the people multiplied and became strong. Now it took place when the midwives feared God that he made houses for them. So God did reward them. And Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, every son who is born you shall cast into the Nile, and every daughter you shall allow to live. And I don't need to ask the children of Israel what they're feeling at this moment, because there must be terror, there must be panic, there must be despair. I can't believe that there would be a voice from the children of Israel that would suggest something positive out of this commandment. So we're moving on. A man of the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. The woman conceived and bore a son.
Sorry, Peta,
Yes.
but it says that Pharaoh commanded all the people. I think we should hear from the voices of the Egyptians when he made this commandment.
Yes, you know, it would be fascinating if we have a voice of Egyptians. I am going to warn you that I don't think we're going to get very far in our text, but we're going to do our best. So let's hear a voice. Is there an Egyptian who wants to add something or give their response when they hear their responsibility to participate in the killing of the boy children? An Egyptian voice.
So
Leon,
I don't live anywhere near Goshen, so there's nothing I can do about it. Forget it.
You have no interaction with these people.
No.
So it's really not any, you know, it's no business of yours. It's no business of yours. You don't know them. It's far away from you. I'm not getting involved. I'm not getting involved, says one Egyptian. Is there any other?
You know that Pharaoh made this decree, and I don't these higher echelon people who rule us. He like, what does he think the Jews are going to do? Just like hand the baby over? You don't think they're going to fight us? You don't think, you know, I mean, how much thought was put into this, that I should go there and just start grabbing kids and dragging them off to the water and throwing them in?
You don't want any piece of it.
I don't want to get involved.
Yeah, don't want to get involved, but
This is not just walk around the corner and get some pita or something. This is not a well thought out thing for the average
so
person.
even some criticism of Pharaoh's decision making here going on.
I mean, he wants to send the army in, that, you know, armed with knives and whatever to you know, get the fathers off of them. You think the mothers, your eyes scratched out, you know? I mean, like, what do you think is going to happen? So, you know, the average person just walk in, take a baby, and, you know, not
So you're not
well
having
thought
any
out.
part of it. Yes, one more voice.
The Hebrew slave. Can I answer?
Yes.
Well, so I just had a baby away from me, and it was really not so them to do it because I'm so weakened, and I
Karen, your sound is really bad, I'm afraid. We're having a lot of trouble hearing you. It's just not a good microphone, perhaps. I'm sorry. But what you can do is use the chat. If you want to type in something, we will also share the chat, and then we can follow you if you want to add something there. And everybody should feel they can do that too. If I don't call on you to answer a question and you'd like to add something, please do feel you can put it in the chat. So moving on, the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was good, she hid him for 3 months. I want to talk to this woman of Levi who saw that her son was good. And I'd like to ask, Mother, what do you mean when you said you saw he was good? I mean, isn't every baby good? Isn't every baby good, Mother? What did you mean? What were you saying?
Not every baby's good. Not every baby's good. Some are unfortunately ill. But also he was born early. I mean, the Egyptians have a real network on us. I don't even know how they could do it. They somehow know when you're pregnant and they just watch you. And he came into the world, actually, this little munchkie came into the world early. And that's really dangerous for a baby. But he's doing really well. And he's quiet. A baby has a peep. And
before you move on, just let me summarize what you've told us already. The first thing about him being good was that he survived. He's
healthy.
And he's healthy. The second thing you told me about him being good is that somehow, even as being born, he tricked the Egyptians. By being born early, he managed to trip them up, which is also good. And the third thing you told me about him being good is he's a quiet baby. He didn't draw attention to himself. So those are all things about him being good. Are there any other mother's responses when you said the baby was good?
Well, you know how everybody thinks their own baby is really special, and that maybe your baby has a special glow. Well, no, my baby has a special glow. Like, he lights up the room. I just don't understand it.
That's it. My baby has a special glow. He lights up the room. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, must be a grandparent like me, right? Any other responses? Because it's really interesting, Mother, whether you think that this baby has an extraordinary goodness, something out of the normal, or whether you see it within the range of normal, which is really interesting. But family, you've got a brother, there's a brother and a sister around, brother, sister, father, anybody else in the family. Tell me about what it was like to have a baby in the house when you knew it was forbidden to have a newborn baby in the house. Tell me what that did to you and to your family.
That was very, very strange. Mom told us about this, and we talked about things that we have to do and not do. And one of the things is that we cannot be happy, because usually when a baby's born, you're happy. But if they see us happy, like even just kind of smiling, we can't, because people will say, "Why you're smiling," or they might get suspicious. So we talked a lot before about how we have to, our faces have to look, and how we can't talk about the baby, and just all sorts of little things. So it's so abnormal. I can't even explain it.
You had to behave. You had to behave with subterfuge. You had to, as children, you had to pretend things were not as they really were. And as children, that's very stressful. On the other hand, we have Karen saying that this baby in the household gave us hope. It seemed miraculous. So you have various possibilities of what was going on in that household. In the one hand, you've got the stress of having to pretend to be other than you are. And we all know the stress that can put on a family. But on the other hand, you've got that hope and that miracle of this baby having survived in your household. You've got both those things in your play. I wanted to hear, I haven't heard a voice of the father. Father, what do you think? And what's going on for you with this baby boy in your house?
You know, I'm working really hard. I work 16 hours a day. I leave at dawn. I come back after dark. I'm exhausted. And if this is what my wife wants, fine. But to be honest, I'm exhausted and I'm very proud of her.
Ah, finally, the husband's proud of his wife for having done this, but he's not directly involved. He's really out of the house and out of the picture to a large extent. Thank you. Any other voices of the father before we move on?
This has been a miracle. You know, I separated from my wife for a few years because I thought, what's the use of us being together? And we got back together and we were blessed with this child. I don't know what came over me that I even separated. So this has been a miracle for us.
A miracle for us. Thank you. So when she could no longer hide him, that's the mother, she took him a reed basket, smeared it with clay and pitch, placed the child into it, and put it into the marsh at the Nile's edge. Mother, I'd like you to relive for me that decision and that moment of taking your baby, putting him in a basket, and putting him on the edge of the River Nile. Share with me, Mother, what is going through your heart and mind as you do this, as you make this decision and as you place the child in the water.
So I don't know really what's happening in my head and my heart. I could see that we can't. And the Pharaoh said to put every male child you should cast into the sea. Put him in the sea, and in a technical way, fulfilling the Pharaoh's command. However, there's something else going on in my head. There's something else going on in my head.
Just before you give me the something else, I would like all of us to stop and think about that moment for this mother. She is fulfilling the commandment of Pharaoh. Every child should be put in the Nile, but not in the way he's envisioned it. This is a very powerful observation, Mother, and thank you for sharing. What else, Mother? You were going to say something else.
I just feel there's something moving. I've always been a very religious person. This child is so special, but the situation is beyond my ability to control. And perhaps that's really all of life really is beyond a person's ability to control. And I am not putting this child in twigs on something that I believe is really, water worthy, and it won't sink. I'm pretty darn sure of that. And there are other things that control us all. And I pray that he will find his way, but
okay, so this is
doomed
not
in my household.
You're not putting the child into nowhere or into nothing. You're actually putting the child into the hands of God. You're letting God take over now the responsibility for this child. Any
Yes.
other thoughts from the mother? Any other motherly thought? I'm going to read you Karen's response. My heart was being torn apart. However, I reasoned that up until this point, everything about this baby has seemed miraculous. It was as if God was watching over him and us from the moment of his birth. So therefore, I relied on God to continue to protect him. But I did my hishtadlut as well by sending his sister to watch over him and see what would happen and intervene if necessary. So here is a mother whose heart is being torn apart at that moment, but she knows she's done everything she can. Thank you. So it must have been a really terrible decision. His sister stood from afar to know what would be done to him. Sister, I'd like to turn to you and ask you, what are you expecting to happen, sister? What do you think might happen, sister?
I have no idea, but I want to be there to be able to step in whatever happens. I want
No
to be
idea.
there and watch. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Crocodiles.
Could somebody say crocodiles? Yeah, crocodiles. You're scared of wild creatures in the river.
I'm scared of the crocodiles for me because I'm hiding in the reeds and that's where they are. And I can't be on the shore usually because then the Egyptians will see me. Sometimes I can. But they,
Okay, so this is really
I find
interesting.
this a little scary, but I really like my brother so much. And I also believe that
This
God's
is a
going to look
scared
after
child.
him. But
a
I
scared
am
child,
scared. I'm
but
scared,
with
but I'm
faith.
going to do it.
Yep.
I'm going to do it.
Any other responses from what do you think might happen, sister? Have you got any idea? So Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe into the Nile, and her maidens were walking along the Nile, and she saw the basket in the midst of the marsh, and she sent a maidservant and she took it. Sister, you're still watching, and you're watching Pharaoh's daughter go and take the child. What's going on for you at that moment as you watch Pharaoh's daughter take the child?
Oh, my heart just suddenly is beating like crazy. My
Heart is
just can
beating.
feel it.
Let's do what Bracha just did. I'm going to ask everybody. One says heart is beating. Somebody else, like that, a short phrase. What's going on for you, sister, as you see Pharaoh's daughter approaching? Just like that, a short answer. Let's get a few.
I'm stunned.
Miracle.
It's a miracle that it's Pharaoh's daughter. It's so when Esther, when you say it's a miracle that it's Pharaoh's daughter, you're not. I'm calling you Esther because the sister has not been named here. You realize that we don't know her name, but you when you say miracle, you're confident that this is good. That this is good. Whereas Karen has told us that she's feeling absolute dread because the daughter of Pharaoh is surely going to be listening to her father. So one sister is elated, thinking it's a miracle, and another sister here is terrified, thinking it's exactly the worst thing that could happen. Anything else?
This is the last time I'm ever going to see him again. He's gone from my life.
He's gone. Whether he lives or dies, he's gone from my life. There's nothing I can do.
I would think there'd be excitement, and if there's a belief that the baby was put in the water to be saved.
You're feeling excited. You're feeling excited, sister.
Yeah, because you're adrenaline. Because
No, there's no you're. There's no you're in Bibliodrama. I am feeling the adrenaline.
Right.
I'm feeling the excitement.
Right.
Any other? Okay.
I just can't imagine anyone looking at his face and not loving him. I just,
So
my imagination.
Even though there's at the first point is this dread, that it's Pharaoh's daughter. Of all the people it could be, it's Pharaoh's daughter.
I didn't feel that way.
No,
because my heart just started beating, and like something was great was going to happen. I don't know
yeah,
why.
This is to say
I don't know why.
sure. Thank you. This is
And as a matter of fact, I'm going to speak to her if I can.
Very good. Very
I'm gonna
good.
talk to
Anyway, she opens it. I'm back to the text. She saw the child, and behold, he was a weeping lad, and she had compassion on him. And she said, this is one of the children of the Hebrews. And Karen's already responded to that. She said, I was even more afraid when I heard her explain he's one of the Hebrew boys. She recognized him. At that moment, this sister is even more terrified because Pharaoh's daughter has recognized that she's looking at a child of Israel. And she's terrified, even though Bracha's sister, the sister that Bracha is representing, is elated because she believes that the glow of his face is so great that any person seeing it is going to be moved and touched. But we're told she feels compassionate. Batya, I want to speak to you. I hope you don't mind if I call you that, Batya. What do you feel? Let's maybe clarify. What do you feel at the moment that you open the basket? What are you feeling? Do you immediately know what you want to do? Are you worried about your father or afraid of your father? Batya, share with us your experience on finding the basket, opening it, seeing the child.
I wouldn't have even thought of this before. I mean, it's just, but my heart just broke looking at him. I'm a little stunned. I mean, but I can't let anything hurt him. I don't know why.
I'm so touched.
I instantly fell in love with him. What a gorgeous baby this is.
Love at first sight.
I would think that she knows the decree, but yes, she sees the
No,
innocent.
no, Harry, you're not playing along with me. I know the decree.
I know the decree, but yet I see the innocence, and I'm overwhelmed with the innocence. So the innocence overpowered what's around her. So she's going with. I'm going with my.
So and this is an amazing thing, because no matter what you might have thought, Batya, it doesn't matter what you thought. What matters is what you feel. And here is another response from Karen. I actually thought that he was a gift from the God of the Nile to me. So this Batya hasn't abandoned her father's faith, but she's interpreted the good thing that's come her way within her own belief system. Very interesting. Thank you. So Pharaoh's daughter said to her, then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call for you a wet nurse from the Hebrew women so that she shall nurse the child for you? And I want to know, sister, and you just can tell me, and in fact, what we'll do is this. In Bibliodrama, we use a lot of scarves when we do it live. I have here a collection of scarves of all different colors, symbolizing all sorts of different things. So what I'm going to ask is, if you are a sister, because we can't use scarves on Zoom, it doesn't work. So if you are a sister who had thought of this all along, for whom this was a planned response, you had said to yourself, if a woman or a person finds this child, I am going to suggest that my mother be their wet nurse. If you had that as a planned response, I want you to put two hands like this. But if it was a spontaneous response that it came to you at that moment, I'd like you to put two hands like that. So this is a planned response. This is a spontaneous response. Let's everybody see what you've got. That's interesting. Everybody who's responded has seen it as a spontaneous response, which is, again, maybe a moment of inspiration that the sister had to feel that she should go and get her mother as a wet nurse. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the child went and called to the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child, nurse him for me. I'll give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. The child grew up and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter and he became like her son. She named him Moses, for she said, I drew him from the water. Well, we're going to now skip a few years in the text. We know nothing about Moshe's childhood in the palace, except for an occasional midrash, but even that's sparse. So I'm going to ask each of you to share one thing about your childhood in the palace. Each of you to share one thing. So you can either share how you felt. Were you loved? Were you teased? Were you respected? You know, those sorts of things. Or you can share with me an incident or something about your way of life. But I'd like everybody to share something about your experience, Moshe, in the palace as a child. Who has something they would like to share with me about their childhood in Pharaoh's palace?
Who can complain?
Who
It's a
can
privilege.
complain?
It's a
So-
privileged life.
Privileged life. Okay, thank you. That was the first response. Moshe is acknowledging, or in this, Moshe had a privileged life. Great. Something else.
I was treated like royalty.
Treated like royalty. So you were part of the household. Thank you.
I was having a great time, but I started to realize that there was something that I was part of out there that's not here, that I'm somewhat of an outsider.
That is really interesting because privileged, treated like royalty, you're not arguing with that, but there was something else. I had a draw or an attraction or a feeling that I was something else. I'm just going to read Karen's response. I became really strong as I had a wonderful education in all aspects of governance and in all areas of warfare, so I could rule and be a warrior. So this Moshe was being bred to take over from Pharaoh. Something else from your childhood.
I won at all the games. Everyone deferred to me. I can't remember anything not going my way. I was
you.
just the best.
It was
Just
the best. Everything went my way. I haven't heard from Esther. Esther, do you want to share something about your childhood as Moshe in the palace?
Very happy, and I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted in the palace.
Thank you. Harry, do you want to share something about Moshe, your childhood in the palace?
Just aware of like that I have that I have everything that I want. That everything is like everything has been served to me. That life has really been good.
Life has really been good. So we've only heard one voice of Moshe who had this naggy feeling that
Yeah,
there was
so
something else.
it was great. It was great. Everything was wonderful. Like the food was good and I had enough kids to play with and it was beautiful. But when we would go out, I'd see all kinds of dirt that wasn't in the palace and it wasn't in the gardens. And I'd see people working really hard and they looked skinny and not happy. And I just didn't get it. And sometimes I'd see people whipping the workers and I didn't get it. Why did they have to do that? I didn't understand.
Thank you for sharing that. There's another thing. There was a niggly thing, my name. I knew what it meant, and I figured out that I may have come from the line of Hebrew slaves that exist beyond the palace gates. So this Moshe is telling us that his name, Moshe, gave him a hint that he'd been drawn from somewhere else and he wasn't genetically connected to the palace. There was this pull, there's something else. So
I remember another life. I think I was very, very young. And there are
few months
things when
old
I
even.
go outside and I hear the different language being spoken, I remember it, but I never learned it at the palace.
Now that's interesting because we're told that the children can have that instinct going back to childhood where they're too young to remember any specific incidents. But something
I can understand what they're saying, but I never learned it at the palace.
So my question would be, on a similar vein, but they used to wean children quite late.
Just a minute. You're Moshe. So if you
Okay.
want to ask the question, you can ask it as an innocent child. You always had a question. Is this a question that Moshe might ask?
This isn't a Moshe question.
Okay, we'll come back to other questions at the end. Okay. Okay. So now we're moving on with the text. It came to pass in those days that Moshe grew up and went out to his brothers and looked at their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man of his brothers. Moshe, the term that the text uses is brothers. I want to know, in what way do you feel these slaves are your brothers? And what about the Egyptian man who was striking? Is he not also your brother? Moshe, share with me about your feeling of brotherhood. Where does it come from? And to where does it go, or to what does it extend? Brothers.
Well, I'm a little confused. It's like I forgot something, and then I knew it, but I didn't know it. And then I got older, and then I figured it out. I mean, I don't even know why I was confused, because I still speak to Miriam. She and I play together, and we just meet every now and again. And I know Miriam, I know Aaron, I know my, I have two mothers. I've always had two mothers.
Okay, so this
and
Moshe,
I know that they're also, I'm Hebrew.
Okay,
but,
so this Moshe
I just never kind of
knew.
connected. I can't really explain why not. And then when
This
I got
Moshe
older,
knew. This Moshe had information. But I wonder whether there are other Moshes here who didn't know, who didn't have information, but rather had instinct or feeling or a pull. Are there other Moshes who had differently from the Moshe we've just heard from, who had some information?
it's kind of like knowing and not knowing, like
okay,
just
but you
accepting.
shared with us
And that's,
that you
I
knew
can't
Miriam.
explain it to you better than that.
But you shared with us that you knew Miriam. You knew, you had some information. I'm wondering whether there are other Moshes who didn't have that information and nevertheless felt the pull. Any Moshes who want to share anything about that? I was so curious to know these purported brothers of mine from the hint of my name. In other words, this Moshe is asking, are these really my brothers? I know I've come from somewhere else, but I'm not sure that the somewhere else I've come from is these brothers. But then I'm going to suggest that you go out and you feel it's like the penny drops. You have that moment where these are my brothers. I didn't know before, unlike the Moshe we heard from who had Miriam sort of tell him who he really was. We didn't know, but the penny dropped. These are my brothers. But I need to ask you again, Moshe, did you feel any brotherhood with the Egyptians, having grown up in the palace with such beautiful, strong connections and all the things that were lavished on you in the palace? Were they not your brothers too?
Yes. They're my brothers, and I am now a teenager And I don't know who I am right now.
I
I
don't
don't know who I am. I went out, I thought I was Egyptian, and I went out just to see the goings on. It's lovely in the palace, but it's like I'd like to go out sometimes. I mean, like they keep a lot of control on me, but what can I say? So I went out and I didn't expect what happened to happen. And now I don't know who I am.
Right. Let's move on. He saw an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man of his brothers. He turned this way and that way, and he saw there was no man. So he struck the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. Now, again, Karen says, I hesitated to kill that taskmaster. After all, what would Pharaoh say? However, I felt a moral imperative to do the right thing. That is one response from Moshe, and that's actually preempting my question, because Moshe, I want to ask you, Moshe, when you struck this Egyptian, when it says you looked this way and that, I'm trying to understand what's going on. Are you thinking it through? Is there something going on in your head that you decide to kill the Egyptian, or is it different? Let's hear what's going on.
I just had impulse. It was just spur of the moment thing. It just didn't seem right. I looked, see if nobody's looking, and I did it. But
okay, so maybe we'll do the same thing as we did with your sister a moment ago, when we asked her whether this was spontaneous or whether it was planned. And with your sister, there was unanimity in this group that she was spontaneous, that she just acted at that moment. So now I want to ask you with Moshe, the text explicitly says he looked this way and that. That might indicate that he was thinking it through and making a decision. But we've just heard from one Moshe that it was spontaneous. So before you answer, I can see as he was ready to give me a response, but before you answer, spontaneous or considered, give it yourself a moment before you decide. Now we have a little bit of dissent and a few people who can't decide. Thank you. I
want to tell you that actually I never meant to kill him. I just want to stop him.
Can I come back to that? Because I want to first hear from Izzy, who says that it was considered. And I'd like you to share with me what did go on in your mind.
You know, sometimes I get these visions I just don't understand. And I could see that from this Egyptian, first of all, I look a lot like my brothers. That's why I call them my brothers. And I could see from this Egyptian, nothing good was going to come. And as a person of royalty, I have the power to correct them.
Thank you. So you really did give it thought. Now, Bracha, what were you going to say?
I was going to say I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted to stop him. And I got really angry seeing what he was doing. And I looked around. I'm not even sure why I looked around. I'm not even sure if I looked around to see if someone else could stop him, or that I didn't want to get into trouble if I got caught. I don't even know. But I got really angry.
You didn't do it on purpose, but then I have to ask, why did you hide the body? Because that's the next thing it says, you hid the body.
Because he died. He died. And
so Moshe, when he died,
it's against the law. I'm royalty, but you can't go around killing anyone.
Okay, so I want to ask you,
I'm going to get into trouble.
After you've killed, this Moshe has told us that he's worried about his future. He's worried he might get caught. But I'd like to hear again, just a word of an emotion. Moshe, you've just killed somebody. It's the first time. Growing up in the palace, you weren't required to kill people usually. What do you feel at that moment that you killed him? Because this Moshe is sort of worried about his own safety, if you like. That's what his first response is. I want to hear other voices of Moshe. What do you feel at that moment when you killed somebody?
I feel sort of rage. I feel
Rage.
a rage because subconsciously, I know that if I had killed one of the slaves, it wouldn't have mattered. But I killed somebody who was an Egyptian. If it was an Egyptian slave, I could have killed him and it wouldn't matter. But because it was a bully with some power, I'm going to get in trouble. And there's just, this doesn't make any sense. It's not right. And I'm angry about this lack of, it's wrong. It's wrong. There's no
lack of justice, perhaps.
The
So
lack of justice. Yes.
Rage is a feeling. Any other feelings of Moshe after you've just killed somebody? Different feelings.
I'm scared, personally.
Scared.
I'm scared.
Scared.
This is not. I don't even. I'm in trouble.
I want to hear
serious trouble.
other responses, Moshe. You've got scared. You've got rage. You've got worry about what might happen to you. What else, Moshe? You've just killed somebody.
I'm feeling a cross point of identity.
So Moshe's position at the moment when he saw his brothers, and now he's killed somebody, but it's actually the same dilemma that he had even before he killed. Before he killed and after he killed, he's still got this struggle with who am I? Who am I? But maybe the question is really sharp now. Who am I? Am I a killer? That might become now part of the who am I?
Right.
Thank you. Other responses? I have to tell you as Moshe how I feel at that moment. I feel sick. I feel I've just killed somebody. I feel sick. It's maybe related to what Harry just said, about who am I? Am I a murderer? What is this that I lost control to such an extent that I killed somebody? Any more? Anything else? Is there grief? Is there guilt? Is there elation? Because I tell you what, we heard from Leah that she was enraged by the injustice. There can be elation that you've actually done something towards righting an injustice. All these range of things that are possible that's going on for Moshe at that moment. But it says, Moshe, you hit the body, and then you go back and you see the Egyptians, and you're really worried. And the end of verse 15 is that Moshe has to flee the scene. He flees. And I want to ask Moshe what he's feeling at that moment that he's leaving Egypt. And perhaps I'll put it even more strongly. So the first part of the question is, Moshe, and maybe I'll ask everybody to give some answer to this. What are you feeling at that moment you leave Egypt? How do you, Moshe, at that moment, see your future? Where do you see your identity? Do you think you'll ever return to Egypt? How do you relate to the children of Israel? At this moment that you are fleeing Egypt, what is going on for you, Moshe? How do you see your future? How do you see it? Do you see it in Egypt? Do you see it with the children of Israel? What do you imagine is happening? Why are you fleeing? Share somebody. I'm going to ask everybody who's with us now to share something about that moment where they are fleeing Egypt.
Like I would think I did what I did, and now I have to escape to find out why I did it and who I am. It's all like kind of meshed. It's like a mess because I had this great life, but I went out there and I felt something was wrong. I acted. Was it rage? Like I don't know, but I did it. Now I think by escaping, I think he was taking responsibility. He was taking.
I'm taking responsibility. I'm taking responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm taking responsibility.
But I'm taking responsibility. But I know I can't stay here. I don't know if I'm running away about fear. Maybe the scriptures will say that better. But I know that I can't stay here, and I'm going to go somewhere to figure out what my next move is.
Thank you. Mark, maybe you're above him on your.
I finally feel relief for the first time in a while since I did that act. I don't care. I'm happy to get away. I don't know if I'll ever come back again, but finally I can breathe freely.
Wow, a moment of relief. That's very interesting, because in a way it could be a moment of fear. I'm thinking of when your ancestor, Jacob, is running away after he thinks Esau wants to kill him, and he's leaving his father's house.
I don't know that answer. I don't know who you're referring to.
Fear, it could be fear, but you've given it a very positive spin, that this is a sense of relief. We have from Karen, was it worth it? I had everything in the palace, but because of one act, albeit one I felt strongly about, because it was a moral one, I lost everything. Maybe I should have stayed in the palace and tried to change the bad situation for my Hebrew people from within. But now what have I really accomplished? Nothing. They will still continue to suffer. So I am fascinated. We've just had 3 of the answers, and I'm going to hear more in a moment. One said, I'm still in this search for who I am and what my identity is, and I don't know what the future will hold because I'm sorting it out. Another has said, I feel relief for the first time. For a long time, I'm leaving. It's almost like a fresh start. Another has said, was it worth it? I'm leaving behind potential to do something, perhaps that the loss might be greater than the gain. So there are 3 completely different answers, and I thank the 3 of you for sharing that. Elaine, you share with us your moment when you're leaving.
I think that if I go back to Egypt, I'll get killed. So I have to start a new life in Midian.
So you have just leaving the past behind, what going to be someone different in a different place, and not thinking about the Egyptian identity, not thinking about the Hebrew identity, but rather in the present. Thank you. Izzy.
I agree. It's a new chapter in my life, and I'm prepared for it. I've had the training and the education. I can get along wherever I go.
Thank you. Esther. Esther, what are you thinking at that moment as Moshe leaving Egypt?
I don't know what's going to be, but whatever, I'm hopeful that I will be successful.
So you're hopeful, an optimist. Bracha and Michael.
I don't really know. I'm on the run. And
on the run. Now that's a different feeling. We haven't heard that. Just hold that thought for a moment. This is a feeling of somebody on the run. That's a different feeling than some of the other people have said. And so do keep that in mind, what it feels like to be a fugitive. It's not the optimism that we heard from some of the others. You're a fugitive.
I can't go back, and I don't know where I'm going.
Right. Thank you. Bracha.
I don't know why I left the palace in the first place. I think I wasn't comfortable there. Could be a lots of reasons, but it doesn't matter now. And I've done what I've done, and now I see I'm not comfortable with the Jews either, because they're talking to me like this, and they're like basically handing me over to Pharaoh and complaining about me. I'm completely shocked.
Okay, I'm going to have to.
I don't belong anywhere. I've got.
I don't belong anywhere. Leah and yeah.
So I've got to run.
Unmute.
So I'm running out to the desert, and I don't know if I'm even going to survive the desert.
Not much hope. May not even survive the desert. And Leah, last thought.
Yeah, I've got to get out of here. I don't know where I'm going. I'll figure it out. But I've just got to get out of here, and I don't know what the future is going to hold.
Thank you. Just that. Now, I'm said to you that we said our names at the beginning, and the normal way you finish a bibliodrama is that everybody then says their name again, because you're no longer Moshe, you're no longer Miriam, you're no longer Batya, you are you. So I'm on the count of 3, everybody just say your name. 1, 2, 3. Peter.
Izzy.
Thank you. So now you are you. So now as you, we round off this exercise. And this is the way that I like to finish a bibliodrama. And please God, there'll be an opportunity for us to do this in person when I next visit Toronto. And we can continue, because this was just a few verses in the book of Shmot. You see how few verses we did. And obviously, even at one point, Izzy said to me, I want to hear another question asked. There's so much more. And I just, I said, well, if we finish here, we finish here, but we might be able to go a bit further. You never know. This bibliodrama is a fabulous, I hope you found it a fabulous method to go into the text. So I want everybody to complete a sentence for me. And Annette, I don't know how much you've been there. I don't know whether you're still with us.
Yeah, I've been here. I'm still with you.
Wonderful. So each of you.
If I can say, we want to wish Annette a complete refuah shalema, that she starts.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
And then I'm going to ask you to go first, because you didn't really participate, but you were on the outside. So I'm going to ask everybody to finish a sentence of one of the following 3 sentences. Either it was meaningful for me when, it was meaningful for me when, it was surprising for me when, or it was interesting for me when, or if you have another adjective you want to add, change it, but it was something for me when. I'd like you to pick a point in this bibliodrama from the time that I began reading, which was the beginning, even before we said the names, until that last question, when we asked Moshe, what was he feeling at that moment? Pick a point in the bibliodrama that was interesting or inspiring or uplifting or engaging or significant for you in the bibliodrama. So I'm going to ask each person to pick one moment. So we're starting with Annette.
So it was eye-opening for me to see that Moshe was brave enough to kill the Egyptian from a moral standpoint. And I wish him all the best in his future. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Leon, are you there?
No.
He's not there. Harry.
It was interesting for me to discover, to come to a cross point when my emotions took over me, and I decided to strike or smot the Egyptian.
That moment
I didn't know that was in me, and here we are, like at that moment.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Elaine.
I found the whole thing very interesting and inspiring. And just one point that I found interesting is the point of view of Miriam, how she felt when she was watching her brother and not knowing what was happening to him. I thought that was very interesting.
That moment was so interesting. Thank you. Izzy.
I found it somewhat eye-opening when, after Moshe killed the Egyptian, in that I always believed that, he looked through Ruach HaKodesh and saw that the Egyptian was no good. But then why did he bury him in a shallow grave like that? And
So
how would I really feel after having killed him?
Thank you. Thank you. Esther.
I found this whole experience very surprising. It wasn't exactly what I expected, but it was a great journey.
Thank you so much, Esther. Was there a moment that you liked?
I just found the whole thing fascinating. This whole the way it was conducted.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Mark.
It was meaningful for me to think of people such as Moshe as humans with emotions and blood, as opposed to just mythical, fictional creations.
Thank you so much. Bracha.
It was interesting for me when I contemplated Miriam going up to Pharaoh's daughter, and then suddenly realized of all the points in the story that I knew so well, that was the only point that made no logical sense, that Pharaoh's daughter would have her son nursed by a Jew, and that the court would allow that. That must have been, unless there was something going on that's not in the text, but surely an Egyptian prince would be nursed by an Egyptian wet nurse, and not the lowest of the low, eating
Isn't it interesting?
crumbly grains. And
thank you, Michael. I need to hear the moment. We've got 3 more people. Michael, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. To me, the issue, the most interesting point was Miriam at the water, because I never really thought too much about, her and what might have been what she was thinking and her motivations. So
thank you.
That was for me.
Thank you, Leah, or Leah and.
Sorry, too many people trying to drive.
Yeah, Leah and Les, that's Les. I found it really interesting to think about what the Egyptians were thinking about the Israelites and what the Israelites were thinking about their role in Egypt at the very beginning.
I was going to say that I thought it was interesting to think about what the different Israelites thought about their life in Egypt prior to all this stuff starting to happen.
Right.
Well, thank you. I have to say to you, I found it very uplifting and interesting to hear your diverse views, and very grateful for your getting into the spirit of Bibliodrama so quickly and easily. It's challenging. I mean, Harry was more, if you like, normal in that he struggled in that a few times to speak in that first person, and I really am very grateful that you were willing to do it and able to do it, because for me it's meaningful to hear alternative points of view, to hear diversity in the responses. And Karen's written something similar, that to hear from other people's points of view and realize that there's not only one way that Miriam or Moshe or Pharaoh or Pharaoh's daughter may have felt at any one time. And as Leah and Les said then when talking about at the beginning, and certainly not all the children of Israel or all the Egyptians, there's diversity in those views, and that's the strength. Karen's mentioned something to me about an article that she has in the Shul Journal, and she says she's taken some of these in the some of these ideas in a different direction in the journal Chachmei Lev. So you might I'd be interested to see some of that or to know what she said as well. And I want to thank again Elaine for supporting this and having me here as your guest. And as I say, I would love to do a bibliodrama in person with you when I'm in Toronto, and currently Bli Neder, as they say, our plans are to be there in Sukkot. So please God, we'll meet in person. Thank you everybody, and good evening.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice experience.
And if I may give kind regards to Bracha and Michael Mirsky, who I haven't seen for a long time now, since they moved to Israel.
And I'd like to thank Elaine for inviting us and for sponsoring this. And your mother, Zichrona Livracha, should have an aliyah. Thank you, Elaine. And thank you, Peta.
Thank you. All the very best.
Thank you, Peta.
Bye-bye.
Beautiful.
Listen.